my life isn't better. And if you get into power, what are...
So then a last question related antitrust. It seems like there are some ideas inherited from your time at the FTC that still find support. There are some that have been rejected. It also seems, like many things with the Trump administration, sort of, antitrust so far.
Our kind of core initiatives that we had set in motion that are still underway. They've kept the merger guidelines in place, for example. The cases that we pursued against the big tech company, and the administration is pursuing those at the FTC. Whether the zeal is going to be extending to just some of the worry, as we see in other parts of the administration, that the law could be weaponized to reward friends and punish enemies. I think we are seeing parts of the government. I mean, on the one hand, the consumer finance, it seems like we're about governing in ways that's checking, but seeing in the direction of weakening. And
I think that there is my sense is that on the one, conservatives who came of age in the late 2010s and had this sort of profoundly negative reaction to their sense of what corporate power wanted to do, basically, on cultural issues, especially in the late 2010s. And out of that, you have this strong interest in ideas like the ones you've referenced, sort of ideas about, bigness generally as a threat to individual liberty, right? And there's a FTC commissioner named Mark and supporters of big business for ignoring big business's threat to individual freedom and personal liberty. So that's there is a very potent philosophical strain. But at the same time, the main thing that I've seen Mark Meador say about you, Lina Khan, right, is there was sort of an X back and forth, right, about the FTC, the Trump era FTC backing away from a PepsiCo.
Just by the way, we're never going to, maybe I'll come back to this prediction, but I think sooner or later he's going to change it back to Twitter, because it really just is not, it's really changed the name. They still call it Twitter. So
there's sort of, we're backing away from this because Lina Khan's FTC overreached disastrously in all these kinds of ways, right? Do you think there's a strong incentive for the Trump FTC to rhetorically distance itself from you, even when it has philosophical positions in common with you?
Well, I think what we have seen is a whole set of attacks on them in terms of them continuing to do too much of what we have been doing to appease some of those masters, including by potentially backtracking on meritorious cases. I mean, the case against Pepsi, we found after a 2-year invest in ways that is in terms of independent grocery. And so it's the case is pretty troubling.
But you think that's about politics? You don't want to speculate.
They fired the Democratic commissioners who would have been at the FTC and would have had some insight into what some of that decision making would be, which was pretty disturbing as well. So I can't speculate. But, I will say embedded in the FTC's DNA is if you are doing your job honestly and with integrity, you will probably upset some powerful interests, right? If you are charged with going up against illegal monopolies tend to have a lot of political power. And if you and a lot of talk, but no follow through.
And go back to where we started and talk about the problems, the economic problems in American life that the antitrust, anti-monopoly movement. Interesting argument between people and people like my colleague Ezra Klein for dealing with the intense thicket of regulatory obstacles to building things in America, building homes in America, building factories in America. Really even disagree that we need more regulation and more scrutiny of corporations in some areas. But I think their view is that there is all of these big corporations and have everything to do with. So that's ended up being the kind of actually ideas that can work together, right? That in fact, the Democratic Party should be anti-monopolist, but also pro-growth in all these other ways that involve fork in the road for the Democratic Party.
Right, and to actually serve as that bottleneck. And so I think taking on those types of corporate bottlenecks, taking on those monopolies is absolutely in the service of stifling that growth. I would say it can be pretty dangerous to talk about regulations as a monolith. There are different types of regulations. There can absolutely be regulations that are creating a lot of complexity and a lot of bureaucracy, and perversely oftentimes benefit big business at the expense of small business because it's the bigger firms that are better equipped to navigate. I can say at the FTC, one of the legacies of the Reagan administration that we were dealing with was a lot of internal red tape and internal bureaucracy that had been created to try to handicap looking at the law, saying a lot of these procedures are not even required in what Congress said. The FTC just kind of made it up to handicap itself. Let's streamline those under 2 years. We need to talk in a market by market way, but if you are offering a diagnosis that is also suspiciously quiet about the role of corporate power, I think that
a diagnosis that seems to always be saying, look at this really narrow specific thing, like, junk fees that show up on hotels.com or wherever else that you don't expect, right? Like, those are pretty annoying, right? But in the end, they're not nearly as big a deal to most Americans as housing prices, right? In general, it's very, very... Blue states and liberal states have, to some degree, manufactured scarcity in housing through heavy regulation, and red states have not. Isn't this, in a way, just going to be a bigger deal for most people than junk fees at the end of a hotel booking or something like that, right? Not that junk fees are good, but if your
agenda is more than junk fees,
yes,
for $35 as opposed to hundreds of dollars. On the issue of housing, I think, you really need to study specific markets or, significant zoning liberalization actually led to more affordable housing. And that analysis said, no, actually it didn't. I do think on this issue of, is anti-monopoly just about small things? It really contrasts with my experience of being at the FTC and seeing on-goal repair restrictions, which you could say implicates people's own sense of autonomy and agency. Or do they feel? And that whole set of issues is deeply, whether you as a worker can freely, whether you have to stay on hold, things deeply affect and shape your experience of.
Well, let's end with.
Yeah, I don't think he was really being that fair to her, because he was kind of pushing housing and building junk fees for hotels. It kind of gets into like a philosophical discussion, but it kind of is about like, what is your life? Is your life the small day-to-day things, or is it these grand, huge things? And I would argue that making those kind of small improvements, like I know again, Jason Calacanacas was making fun of her for trying to fix the subscription thing, but I think it's, that's something that like everybody deals with on the day-to-day. I think that's really an important thing to focus on. I don't think even small things like that should be kind of looked down on.
The internet and Silicon Valley and Meta, which used to be called Facebook, because it's in court that Mark Zuckerberg's company and should be broken up in. I think it's a good sort of distillation. What would it solve for the average American internet user? What would be the benefit? Be it material, be it political, be it social. So the case is arguing that Facebook's acquisitions of Instagram brought them in-house. Services have been degraded. WhatsApp, for example, famously had provided users more privacy. You could pay as little as $1 and WhatsApp would not be monetizing your data. What WhatsApp was bought internal to Facebook, real costs in terms of privacy, indicate very strongly that people would then have more to fill more gaps in terms of what consumers really want. I think the other big question is, what does a forward-looking remedy look like? Because you're right, these acquisitions were done over a decade ago. And they were done, I should stress, at a period when, from the point of view of the average person, Facebook as an internet user, it seems like churn, rise, decline in 2014 or 2015. That would just seem more persuasive. Think about AI and what the future of these artificial intelligence markets are going to look like. Yes. Because you do have significant overlap between the kind of
are going to potentially be positioned to dominate some of the key inputs for artificial intelligence. Meta is a player. They have some of these more open models. And so, one thing we're seeing play out in the Google litigation right now, Google has been found to be an illegal monopoly, both in online search markets as well as digital ad markets. And one key question that judges are facing is, what does a forward-looking remedy look like? And the Justice Department, both under the last administration and in this administration, has made some arguments around what it would look like to AI markets. And that's a core tenet as you're thinking about antitrust remedies. You want to stop the illegal behavior, you want to stop its recurrence, but you also want to deny the lawbreaker the fruit of its lawbreaking. And that could mean in these, more old school markets, or it could mean in these forward-looking markets. And so we're going to have to wait to see how that plays out.
Okay. But as someone who is both concerned about the future of AI and concerned about the impact of the internet on society, right? This is a case where I am persuasive. They don't necessarily seem to say to me, okay, we want Facebook to spin off WhatsApp and Instagram, or, whatever remedy you might seek, right? And I'm concerned about thank God we've finally gotten more competition, right, in the social media app space. That's great. That's what I need, right? I need 17 TikToks and not just one. That's not my reaction. And the same in which your remedy seems, I want about this, right? Do you think it is relevant to these concerns?
Well, one of the things that came out through the Facebook trial was this issue of Instagram showing a shocking number of individuals it had categorized as a group. And so, we can ask why was this? Is this related to the fact that Facebook is not having to compete? But I do think we've seen situations where firms not being checked by competition on issues like, are you making your services safe for kids, can all be worsened by the issue of monopoly power. There are absolutely social harms that are less complicated, the FTC's consumer protection work, the idea of notice and consent. I'd point to the fine print, they could basically get away with doing it. We ended up instead drawing some bright lines and saying there are certain types of sensitive data, like your health data, your precise geolocation data, your browsing data, where the default cannot be their firms can just collect and disseminate this data, including with companies in foreign jurisdictions. And so these types of background rules are absolutely needed for ultimately making sure that these digital markets are serving us as a society.
Okay, I'm going to make one last try, though, to force you to be more sweeping in your analysis there, but to the way we live. My personal concerns, but they're widely shared concerns about the way that Silicon Valley in particular, its technologies are reshaping the nature of human life, the nature of human interaction, the nature of childhood, and then potentially with AI, all kinds of things beyond that, right? And my sense throughout this interview is that you don't want to separate the political and the economic. You could push breaking up concentrations of power, even if it's bad for the economy, if it's good for society and good for democratic flourishing. And that could apply to Silicon Valley, that we want weaker tech giants for the sake of political goods and not economic ones. Do you think that's true?
It's absolutely true that policymakers could decide that. The existing antitrust and anti-monopoly
that we have on the books now, but influential movement in American left and the right. So I'm just curious, for sort of big, not just thoughts on what can should a movement worried about, how should a movement worried about corporate power think about the internet and Silicon Valley going forward? That's all.
If you outsource your policy prescriptions to just a certain set of market prescriptions, I think that's dangerous, and you kind of lose sight of what are some of the broader public values and the social good that we care about. And so I absolutely trajectory of some of these technologies for what some neoclassical economists would want.
Excellent. So I've talked Lina Khan into banning the internet, and not really, but on that note, Lina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Man, he really asked a lot of the same questions that I would have asked if I had been there.
I don't know.
Pretty interesting that there's this kind of left-right, I guess what they're calling populist. I still don't quite know what populist means in any general sense, other than it refers to kind of like the Bernie saying, yeah, I mean, that was definitely an interesting interview. I hope you guys liked it. I don't know if it looks like we have like 104, 105 viewers. So I hope that's interesting. If I don't really have that much to say, I guess I won't say it. Like I was saying before, this is just my third ever stream, and so I'm just trying to figure it out as I go, what's worth, adding or not. I guess if nothing else. So I was thinking about doing Tim Dillon's latest episode, but maybe since we just did a couple really serious things with Lina Khan, Roch Douthat, and then we're talking about Mark Andreessen and what he said about how cool that is, which if you guys missed it, I did put on my timeline, so it's here. If you guys want to take a look while you're driving by in your Waymo and how cool and cyberpunk it was. So yeah, go back and watch that. I guess this looks like a short came up from the Peter Thiel Douthat interview. Maybe tomorrow we'll do this, but it looks like they're just gonna quick talk about Elon's plan, whether or not he still believes in going to Mars. So let's take a look at this real quick, and then we do Tim Dillon and Tucker Carlson.
Conversation I had with Elon, where I said, there's nowhere to go. This is the only place. And then, you always think of the right arguments to make later. And it was about 2 hours after we had dinner and I was home that I thought of, wow, Elon, you don't believe in going to Mars anymore. 2024 is the year where Elon stopped believing in Mars, not as a silly science tech project, but as a political project. Mars was supposed to be a political project. It was building an alternative. The socialist US government, the woke AI, it would follow you to Mars. It was the Demis meeting with Elon that we sort of brokered. He was doing DeepMind.
This is an AI company.
Yeah, this was the rough conversation was, Demis tells Elon, I'm working on the most important project in the world. I'm building a superhuman AI. And Elon responds to Demis, well, I'm working on the most important project in the world. I am turning us into interplanetary species. And then Demis said, well, my AI will be able to follow you to Mars. And then Elon's.
Yeah, I don't know if Elon actually believes we're going to get to Mars, or if he's going to do it in his lifetime or what, or maybe he just wants to have a big goal, but it always felt kind of fake to me. Like, maybe it was kind of like a pipe dream, or he wants to have some big goal to work on. I don't know, but I have a hard time believing even he thinks it's necessarily possible to get there, if we should get there. I mean, my personal opinion, things like that.
Sort of went quiet. But in my telling of the history, it took years for that to really hit Elon. It took him till 2024 to process it.
But that doesn't mean he doesn't believe in Mars. It just means that he decided.
And again,
what does Mars mean?
Well, is it just a scientific project, or is it, I don't know, is it like Heinlein,
a vision of a new society?
Yeah, Heinlein,
populated by many
libertarian
people
paradise
descended
or something
from
like this.
Elon Musk.
Well,
right,
I don't know if it was concretized that specifically, but if you concretize things, then maybe you realize that Mars is supposed to be more than a science project. It's supposed to be something other than just going to Mars.
Yeah, like I was telling you guys, I think it's a pretty new.
There is a back in 2024, and we had all these conversations. I had the seasteading version with Elon where I said, if Trump doesn't win, I want to just leave the country. And then Elon said, there's nowhere to go.
Stop. All right. I'm not subscribed on this account, but on my other account, I'm subscribed. I'll just hit subscribe, give him an extra subscriber. But yeah, he's had a bunch of interesting guests, and it has a nice production value of being done by the New York Times. So yeah, it's definitely worth watching. I'm gonna go back and check out any episodes that I have missed. But all right, we've been doing 119 people watching on Twitter. So yeah, thank you everyone for tuning highlights, which looks like it's from 11 months ago. I guess this was before the election, right? It must have been. Or put something in the chat. This is just might have some laughs since we've been doing serious, heavy tech stuff all day. So
every argument that a boomer ever tries to win, they just point at their house. They're the last really truly funny generation, I think, because everyone has becoming flattened, but they are just very funny and deeply selfish. I mean, it's, some injuries. She said she was attacked made up the story that she was attacked at a supermarket parking lot. She just was like, I'm attacked and I can't go. And she just missed his wedding. She didn't go to his wedding. Why? They're crazy, these people. I don't know these boomers. I swear to God, I was on the phone with my aunt, which is her sister. And I go, what do we think about a funeral, everything like that? Maybe Thursday. She goes, I know. She goes, we've got a boat thing. No, with some friends, but she goes, we could get it. Maybe we'll do it next. We figured out. I love them. I don't hate, I love them because it's they're horrible, but they make me laugh so much. And I was able to, just fuse the stuff together to make it. And that's what makes them
What's so funny
funny
is they're getting credit for it, though. Totally.
And none of it meant anything. You want to be like that guy? You want to be like that? But they're like, you want to be like that guy? And it was usually an in-shape guy, working construction. You want to be a scumbag like him? Or do you want to sit in an office like me and cheat on your mother?
Did you go to college?
No, I went to a community college for 2 years and dropped out. I won a debate championship gold medal.
I wonder if when they made this compilation here, they cut off Tucker's laugh so that he didn't seem quite so insane. Because lately his laugh is really, it's really getting out of hand. Can we say that?
In debate, and I just dropped out of college and I went into finance because I didn't like.
What'd your parents say? Your boomer parents?
They were disappointed. They were thinking I would fail.
They knew you well.
I mean, so the two options for a boomer kid, a millennial or whatever you want to call me, a Gen X or whatever, succeeding, which they would be happy about because they would claim total credit for it.
Yeah.
And then failing, and then they would go, well, you didn't listen to us. Of course you failed. And I think with me, they were very much like, he's going to be a big mess. And we're going to get to tell people all the time how you didn't listen to anything we said. And this is why. But then it ended up, it looked like it was going one way. It went the other way. So they're fine now. They're cool with it. But it's just, it was, they didn't expect it. They didn't expect it.
Would you
They said to me, my father's wife said to me, who I do like a lot, but she goes, how does someone like you who made every wrong decision.
Does that occur to them?
Never.
Do you sort of tell the story, right?
You would think, which is why I love.
Because they're afraid of what's coming. They know they'll be punished in the next life.
I don't even know. They seem to be very ambivalent about that. They seem to face death in kind of a very they don't seem to be too, I'm kind of impressed.
They don't seem appropriately afraid.
Yeah, I'm somewhat impressed by them, actually. They're they're very casual about it. I think because their main fears are discomfort. And I think if they're gone, there won't be any more discomfort. There's no more traffic.
What? So you're writing a book about the boomers?
Yeah. They fell for every corporate slogan. My father, who I love, but will cry at commercials. He would cry at the Budweiser Clydesdales and to the 9/11 thing. He loved the Budweiser frogs. He loved They loved commercial. Boomers adored commercials. They liked a good Folgers commercial with the family sit. That all of these things that corporations really cared about spinning out a little bit now because they've realized a little bit to some degree how wrong they were about everything. And it was now it's kind of becoming, apparent. My aunt said to me during COVID, it made me laugh. She goes, we're on the phone. And they just make me laugh so much. She goes, I hope vaccine. I said, yeah. She goes, because I want to travel. and I worked my, like, okay, because I want to travel. I want to go on cruises. And because I've worked my whole life. And I believe she's been retired for about 30 years.
with full dental.
Maybe
I'm sure.
25 years.
Right, yeah.
But like, it is just it's very funny the way that they.
And I said, first of all, I would tell you if I was a racist. I'm really not a racist. I'm actually a sexist.
Right.
And which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
Sort of true. And I thought, that's a good line.
Yeah.
Didn't print it.
No, they won't print it.
If someone said that to me in an interview, I would print that.
Yeah, I participated once. I don't know a ton of. I know some people in journalism, but I participated once in this thing where like there's a few journalists that like wanted to talk to a comedian because they were like, we want to start using more comedy in our pieces. And I was like, wait, what? And they were just these totally unfunny like people. It was just tough. I was like, guys, just write the fucking news. But they wanted like. What
did you tell them?
I just said, I don't know. I think people that are good at this stuff are good at it, and I can't tell you how to make something funny, because they were basically saying like, we think that our reach will grow dramatically if we're funny. And I go, I think if you're lounging around in a DC townhouse trying to figure out what problems that you need to go out and desperately solve, you have a deficit of purpose. And I think this idea gives them the sense that now we are back in World War II. And there's good and there's evil, and this is the purpose. This is why we've all been on the planet, other country, over 2 regions, truly. And I'll give him part of this country too. There's a lot of this country.
Which parts?
A lot. There's parts of it that we don't need. I'll give him part. If Putin wants it, we'll give him parts of California.
North Jersey?
Yeah, we'll give him some parts of that. We'll give it. I think we should actually, let's really fuck him. Let's give him upstate New York. Let's give him a lot of Michigan. Let's give him stuff where he goes, hey man, I'm good.
Could he fix Schenectady, do you think?
I don't know if anyone could. I was just in Schenectady and I like the people there, but I don't know if anyone could. I actually said on stage, it would be nice if Putin invaded this.
What kind of response did you get?
They all laugh. They're great. They're great comedy.
Yeah, they are.
They get it.
The solution is not working.
Yeah.
Is not actually having
in
the
LA,
intended effect.
A lot of the white people.
This is a pretty good bit, but just for the record, Russia, especially rural Russia, is definitely worse off than rural America and most of Europe or the rest of the West. So, yeah, I don't think giving it to Putin would really help. Everybody could do. They'd all be doing Crocodile instead of, oxys and meth and whatever everyone's doing up there. I don't think that's really a problem that could be solved that way. But anyway, he's just making jokes. I don't know why. I just feel like I should have said something.
No one has a job, even the ones that have money. They sit around. They kind of have smoothies. They
what is that?
They float around. I don't know, but no one really works. They
I noticed
float
that.
around for cafes. They have like kind of fake meetings.
They take meetings all the time.
Talk to another person, and that's a meeting. And they go, what about this? And what do you think's going on? And they have coffee, and they go, this coffee is not as good as the last. And it's. No one seems to be working.
But where's all the money come from?
I don't know. I have no idea. The CCP? I don't know.
For real, though.
I don't know who's floating it. I mean, usually when I have a lazy friend, you go back in their family lineage, someone got a bag of money somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm sure maybe just rich people that aren't criminals, but a lot of them are guys. If you look it up, it'll be like a guy who poisoned a river in Zambia and then is now... And it's like, that's why all these real estate shows are fake. They're all not true. They're all these, with these attractive women, they walk around and they find a guy who's a basketball player or a guy who's like an actor. None of them are even buying the houses, by the way. I know the people that work on these real estate shows, they really sell the houses to a lot of people that just come in speaking complete Mandarin. And I have a friend who's a real estate agent, and they come in, they speak complete Mandarin to a translator. He just points. He's in Beverly Hills and pointing. There you go. They stand outside, they look at the view. And they're the ones who are actually buying houses, or Russian nationals, or oligarchs, or people from the United Arab Emirates, or people from the Brazilian mining magnates, or people from India. It's not really a lot of domestic buyers in LA, in New York, it's a ton of foreign nationals, and that's why these real estate shows just aren't true. If they were true, it would be a real estate agent greeting someone at the door and going, "This is a beautiful house. How did things go at The Hague? Are you okay?" Everything was good at The Hague? Great. We saw that. Take a look at the veranda. They have that would be the real show, but it's not the real show, you know? I remember sitting at a table with like Jake Paul and a few of these guys, and Jake Paul's like, are you investing in Cumrocket? I said, what is that? And he's like, well, it's a coin, you know, it's a shit coin, but it was going up. He's like, I've made all this money. And I called my business manager like 2 a.m. in Miami, and I'm a sober guy, but I feel high because I'm calling my business manager at 2 a.m. going, should I invest in Cumrocket? And he goes, I think so. I think probably. So this is how nuts everyone got.
Did you invest in Cumrocket?
I didn't. I was at the end of the day, I pulled out, and I'm like, nah, let's just stick with the Bitcoin and Ethereum.
You pulled out of Cumrocket.
I pulled out of Cumrocket. I said, you know what? This is too volatile.
Yeah.
But
you went with the withdrawal method.
I went with the withdrawal method of Cumrocket. I said, we don't want it all over the place. But when people like Ann Applebaum write that Russia's a failed state and we need to westernize it, this is in the Atlantic.
It's a failed state.
She's written these things, and this is a common
Maybe
belief.
a state you don't like. It's the opposite of a failed state. It's a coherent state.
Yeah, you can not like it.
Yes.
I remember that.
Oh, you do?
I remember when I was a senior year in high school, and everybody goes, here's what we're doing. We're going to Afghanistan and Iraq. We're going to democratize the Middle East. This was the project.
Yeah.
Now these psychopaths want to democratize Russia. Back then they were Republicans. Now they're calling themselves Democrats. It doesn't seem to matter. They float between the two parties. Bill Kristol's on MSNBC now all the time. And I remember, I'm old enough to remember that how did we leave Afghanistan 20 years later? Does it seem democratized? The Taliban goes back in power. It should be, it's like if you have a party.
Rearmed by us?
Yeah. If you have a party at your house and it burns down, your parents should go, you're done now. You're done. Right. In our new house, you don't have any parties. You got to really establish that you've grown and learned from this. Doing this again.
Do you feel that changing, like to the extent that you're with Brentwood Wine Moms now?
Yeah.
Are they less enthusiastic about the brave Ukrainian people?
They don't care.
They don't care.
No one cares. No one really cares. It's just fun to pretend to care. No one cares. No one. Unless you're from the Ukraine, it is not even a real thing. You know, if it comes up at a dinner, people go, terrible, terrible, horrible. Do they have the sticky toffee pudding? No, it's not real. We don't fight. We just arm people. We send money. Very upset. But none of these things affect corporate. I mean, every sushi restaurant looks like every state.
What's fun look like?
Just kind of marble and like a neurology clinic, right? So everything, and I know you're big on architecture, so that's one of my things. It's designed to just, exist primarily on a screen. And, it's like, you lost a lot. That's the thing. People go, oh, who cares? People, small businesses. Like, no, but the country you live in is fundamentally different. You see different things.
Physically different. Why does nobody notice that?
Nobody notices. Nobody cares. People they're just being ushered into this new thing, and nobody's asking. Everything is the same 10 corporations. It's the same 20 restaurants. You go to any town and you have the football stadium, the baseball stadium. You have the two chain steakhouses and a Marriott, a Hilton, a nice old hotel that's kind of broken down, but is kind of like charming, and it has a brunch on a Sunday, and then it's surrounded by 45 minutes to an hour of urban decay. That's every city in America outside of 10.
Where's the resistance? Like when I was a kid, there was a group called Earth First, which I made fun of because they were like liberals or whatever.
Right.
Now I sort of love them, but there's nothing like it left. And they would just go put sugar.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was talking about this with someone earlier because I had read this book by Virginia Pastrell called The Substance of Style. And it was written in like 2004, 2005. She was talking about how, everybody was complaining that every town was starting to become the same, which, if you travel around and you go to Miami or New York or San Diego or LA, and it is like the same stores and the same restaurants, there is something very hollow and kind of heartbreaking about it. But one of the things she mentioned was that it actually has created it brought a lot more variety to those places. So she was saying back, when she was younger, I guess in like the 70s and 80s, 60s, that most towns in America would just have like a diner and a cafeteria, and maybe if they were lucky, a pizza place. But now, because every town has a Chipotle and a Chick-fil-A and a mall and all of these things, that it's actually brought a lot more variety to each place. So it's kind of a weird thing. Like, I understand complaining about it, and they get a lot more, different things to eat and wear. And I don't know. I go back and forth on that, but anyway.
In the gas tank of bulldozers, we're trying to clear cut woods to build a development. And their point, they were kind of Kaczynski.
Think you're great. The internet says it's good. We vibe. If you want a black female CEO, you're going to get one. We're not stopping the sweatshops, but you're going to get a black female CEO. You might, we can get anything you want. We will do anything you want. You want a polyamorous orgy here at Chase? We'll do. The tech people are now very much like, we're utopians. We're great. We're good. Everything's good. We drink green juices. We ride bikes. We care about the environment. We care about you. And that's it. And, all the 14-year-olds are killing themselves because of our product, but we're good people. And there's something really scary about people that come to you. It's always and I'm just the type of guy where if somebody comes to me out of nowhere and goes, hi, I care about you. I love you and I care about you and I want you to have the best life ever. And I go, cool. What's this about? Because I know what's coming next.
Right. Which is rape.
Yeah, what's coming next is just get in this van.
I hate this. I can't believe I'm saying this, but that's like a brilliant analysis.
Yeah, well,
really smart.
Good question. I did. Used to do these fundraisers in Long Island. You would get booked, and they were very bad rooms for comedy that have these circular tables where people are eating dinner with each other.
Yeah.
And then you would be in the corner of the room with a microphone.
Ooh.
And they would bring you up. And a lot of times you'd be following a performer or somebody. This was a woman who was crying. Her daughter died of cancer. And she was a fighter and we love her and everyone's clapping. And then the guy gets up and goes, now we have a comedian. And I went up and I'm doing jokes about like frozen yogurt and stuff. And it just didn't. It was bad. It was bad because it was utter disinterest. There's bombing where people hate you and you can almost feed off the energy of hatred. And then there's utter disinterest. There's utter like, God, this was a bad idea and we're checked out. And the worst thing is knowing it was a bad idea. It was a terrible idea. I shouldn't be there and we shouldn't have done this.
What joke has offended people more than any other?
I have a bit about the Ukraine people don't like.
Really?
I do, yeah.
What do you say?
Well, I can't say it here because then no one will see me. But no, I'm kidding. It's what do I say? What do I say? I describe a scene where I say this guy Zelensky, I said, I don't like him because he's ripped, he's good looking, and he wants money. There's nothing worse than a good looking guy that he doesn't know where to get any money. And I go, he pops up in the middle of the Grammy Awards when you're just trying to watch wet ass pussy with your children.
Yeah.
And I said, you called him into the room and you bring out your pregnant 12-year-old and she's twerking in the living room and your other kid comes out and they're nonverbal and they're just in the back kind of swaying. And then this guy from a country you've never heard of wants money. And I go, Vladimir Putin's maybe not a great guy, but so far he's asked me for $0.
I agree.
And some people did not like it.
They didn't like it?
Some people didn't like it. Some people like it, but it's fine. To me, it's fine. It's just funny, the idea of what a mess a lot of the people are in this country that we're asking for money.
I know.
And that makes me laugh. The idea that they're like, I'm just describing this crazy scene. And then they're like, wait, you know what I mean?
Your agent has never had moral qualms with anything you do.
My agent wouldn't know what a moral qualm was if you took out a dictionary and explained it to him. He's a good guy. He, would it be his favorite thing that I was in Russia? Perhaps not, but he wouldn't drop me.
Is there anything you could do that would make him drop you?
Sure. Absolutely. I think they drop you for all kinds of reasons, but I don't know. I would say the most dangerous thing for me to do that would get my agency to drop me would be to like assert my humanity.
I am not an animal. I am a man.
Yeah, that would be tough.
But how can you continue to run this country in the way that you are, if you're the people who are running it, and allow people to criticize you this precisely?
You have to make it financially beneficial. I think that's the whole thing, right? Like, they are going to co-opt the methods of distribution to a degree that, if we call them pedophiles, they'll make money from it.
Wow, is that dark? That's like,
they're not going to get called pedophiles for free.
That's the darkest thing I've ever heard. So they're not going to shut down the speech. They're just going to monetize it. Monetize the attacks on
Seems
themselves.
to be a happy medium.
All right. At least we ended things on kind of a funny note. Let me see there. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. It looks like we got like 138 people watching right now, which is pretty wild. So this is just my third one, technically second. I didn't really put anything together for the first one. I was just kind of checking the technology. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go again tomorrow. If you guys want to follow me, it's at Adam Foster here on Twitter and pretty much everywhere. I guess